Turn any podcast audio file into a draft blog post in WordPress without touching the keyboard once. I'll show you exactly how using AutoKit, AI, and WordPress. Let's go. Here's exactly what this looks like. I record, let's say, a 20-minute conversation about marketing strategies. I upload the audio file to my podcast host, and about 15 minutes later, I have a complete blog post with headlines, sections, and even SEO optimization all ready to be published on my WordPress site. So let me show you how I put this all together. So here we are looking at the workflow in AutoKit. Our trigger is a podcast RSS feed. I find that that's probably the easiest way to go about doing things, since you're probably going to be using a podcast host to publish out your audio files. Why not use an RSS feed? So in our RSS feed, I am using Libsyn, but you'd use whatever host you're using. What you want to look for when you go to test this in AutoKit is to make sure that you have, at the very bottom here, attributes URL, because that's important in our next step, which is extracting the text from the audio file. So I'm just going to click Save there. And what we're going to do next now is going to be using Dumpling AI API request. And this might be a little technical, might be a little bit on the developer side, but it's very low code, not no code, but low code solution. And so let's take a look at this and I'll briefly walk you through it. So we'll click on this action here for an API request. That's our only option in the event, is an API request. If we go to the configuration tab, if you're not familiar with any of this, it's going to look completely foreign to you, and I will walk you through it as the best as I can. So in order for this to work, your initial step before you put in this API request is to go over to, in this case, Dumpling AI. You might have your own solution, but for this to work, you're going to need an API key. So from the API keys page, click on Generate New Secret API Key, give it a name, something identifiable so you know what it's going to be used for, then click on Create Key. Then you want to download this someplace safe because you're going to need to be able to reference it again. And it's always a good idea to keep it somewhere safe. Otherwise, you're going to have to start over and create a new API key. And who wants that? So once you've got it saved, click OK, and then we can go on with the next step. Our next step in our low-code solution here is to take a look at the Dumpling AI API reference, and specifically the extract audio. And so here they give us the exact things that we need to put in to our API request for AutoKit to connect to Dumpling AI. And I'll leave a link to this reference in the description below. Basically, the components are this endpoint URL, these headers, and that's where your API comes into play, and this request body, which is JSON. So we need all of those components, and we're going to plug them all into our API request over in AutoKit. Now, this might seem very overwhelming, but it is relatively straightforward. So with our API key in hand, with our components that we have to add in all here for us, we'll go over to our API call here, our API request, and we'll see here that we have select method as post. Our payload type, although not specified in this reference guide, is going to be raw JSON. Here's our endpoint URL that's been provided to us. And then here's where we're going to add in the headers. Now it might, for you, if you're just getting started out, it'll be an empty check mark. So you check that off, and then you get a blue plus button that says add header. You want to click that a couple of times so that you can add in both headers. So your first one is content type, application/JSON as your value. And that's exactly what they have here, right? And then the next one is going to be our authorization, which includes that word bearer followed by our API key. Once we have that, we're going to put in our JSON code. This is the only code part you really have to do. And it's really provided for you in the API here. So you just copy this, and then you want to paste it over here. And then the only thing that we really need to do is change out the prompt, because that tells the Dumpling AI what you want to do with this text. So I'm saying provide the complete text of this audio. And our audio is being pulled in from that URL from our RSS feed. Let me just show you. I'm going to click X out of that. So it's a dynamic data that's coming in. So we'll hit the @ symbol here. Here's all of our RSS items that are coming in from that feed. And we want to look for this one, attributes URL, and plop that in there. And so therefore we've fulfilled all of our obligations here to make our API request. And then we can click continue here, and then you would click test action. And then you're going to get results, prompt. In this case, I was summarizing. Audio duration, how long the audio is, and then credit usage. Now be careful with your credit usage. It is a base of 10 every call you put in. And then I think it's every minute is 2 credits. So if you have a lengthy podcast, you're going to use up a lot of your credits with Dumpling AI. So we'll click cancel there. Once we have our transcript from our audio file, we want OpenAI. In this case, you could use Claude or Perplexity or whatever you're more familiar with or whatever you're using. We want to rewrite it. So if we open up our action here, we're using a chat completion, and under configuration, I'm using the 4.0 model. You can use probably 4.0 latest or any one of the, maybe in one of the new ones that's come out, maybe 4.1 or something like that. Test it out, see what the results you get are different than what you'd be using ordinarily, which is 4.0. I've got my role in here. You're a skilled editor and writer. Give you a raw audio transcription, which is what it's getting. Rewrite it into clean, natural sounding English. And I give it a bunch of instructions. What we're putting in the message is the results or the extraction from Dumpling AI. Max token is 600. You can probably just take that out. I was just testing that. We can click continue here, click on test action, and it will translate our podcast audio text into something more reasonable maybe. So there you go. There is our nicely cleaned up text. We'll click save there. Our next step, which is important in our final step, which is publishing to WordPress. WordPress likes to have HTML and WordPress likes to have clean HTML. So in our next step here, we're going to be formatting our HTML. Again, using OpenAI. Go into configuration here. And for our role, I'm just saying you're a skilled content formatter. You give cleaned up text from an audio file. Put out clean HTML for a blog post, and I tell it to fix grammar and things like that, add an emphasis where it finds it needs it. And I also put in that I want to include a link back to the audio file. So I've put a link in here explicitly to either, and I gave it the choice, either beginning or the end. In my testing, it's always put it at the bottom, probably because it comes at the end of the prompt. That's my guess. And for our message here, we're putting in the reformatted or the cleaned up version of our text from OpenAI. And we'll click continue and click save. Our next step is a specific thing for WordPress in our WordPress step, and that is to create a title. You can't split this out nicely in this case. So I just have a separate call to create a title for our WordPress post. And I just gave it some no more than 70 characters, cleaned up content, figure out what the best title would be. And we're giving it the cleaned up content from the OpenAI version. And the max tokens here is 400. You can leave that blank if you want, but I don't think it's going to go over 400 for 70 characters. So click cancel there. And I put in optionally, if you're feeling so bold, to create a featured image for your blog post in Dall-E. These never come out really well, but in the configuration I tried, I used the cleaned up version from OpenAI to put it in there to describe what it should be creating. We'll click continue here. We'll click on test action and you can see what it's going to look like. I don't have it included, but it is going to run in the workflow, but I don't have it included in the output to WordPress. So we can grab this URL down here and see what it looks like. There you go. I mean, that's pretty good. I like the style. It doesn't really say anything other than there's a lot of people busy at work. So, take that with what it is. So that's an option that you have in here. And our last step, of course, is to create our draft blog post. Now, I say draft if you're feeling so bold, so confident in your AI capability, you can go ahead and publish. So let's take a look at this. So you need to connect your AutoKit to your WordPress website. So in other words, you need to install the AutoKit plugin on the website that you're going to be publishing blog posts to. So that's how you make this connection. And then under the configuration tab, I'm leaving post URL blank, post ID blank. I'm using post as post type. And here's draft. Now, you can do publish if you are, again, feeling so bold. Not me. Categories. We're using the categories as our taxonomy. Category is blog. You got to select the author. And for the post title, this is where you put in the AI generated post title. And the featured image, oh, I do have it in there. I was playing around with this. So that's an option. You can keep it or you can take it out. And then for the post content, make sure you're turning on map here and then selecting the HTML output from the AI, OpenAI. And we'll click continue here. So this is what you're going to get, a nice HTML formatted content, and you'll get this type of blog post. From podcast to published draft in under 10 minutes, while other creators are still typing, you're already onto your next podcast episode. If you want to try AutoKit for yourself, I've got my affiliate link below. Costs you nothing extra, but helps support the channel, and I really appreciate that. If this workflow just saved you hours of work, hit that like button and keep building smarter.